Lord Baroness Bennet of Manor Castle.
My Lords, it's a pleasure to follow my noble friend Baroness Jones of Molescombe in thanking the noble Lady Baroness Kidron for tabling Amendment 23. Baroness Jones and I don't usually speak on the same amendment, but there's a particular range of issues that I wanted to specifically speak to on this amendment. Something that no other noble lords have addressed, which is the issue of controlling of advertising, which is a fast rising area of concern. And when I talk about advertising, I also mean some of the broader online issues such as product placement and payments to influencers that are effectively indirect forms of advertising. And now this is where I'm going to agree with a comment from the noble Lord Vasey yesterday, which may surprise the House. But he was expressing concern about differential controls on advertising for broadcasters in the UK that didn't apply online. And yet we know, of course, that consumers' consumption of media is very much blending. Indeed, the divisions between those two, from the point of view of consumers, are pretty well artificial these days. And we do have, in some areas, already quite tight controls in the UK for broadcasters and others on smoking advertising, for example, some controls on gambling advertising, limited controls on alcohol advertising. We've seen, particularly in the London Underground, controls on advertising of unhealthy food. And we are, as we start to really face up to our role as chair of COP26, and we face the climate emergency and the nature crisis, I think there's a broader concern about advertising that's rising about its place in driving consumption, driving the destruction of our planet. But this amendment is particularly about children, and it's actually Green Party policy that all advertising directed at primary age pupils, who psychologists tell us are not actually able to distinguish between advertising and programs or editorial content, that all advertising just so directed should be banned. And if we think about the online context, it should be possible to actually create a situation where we can protect children from online advertising up to a certain age limit. And I note that just before Christmas, on a question on gambling advertising, the noble lady for the government, noble Baroness Lady Baron for the government, said that, and I quote, "We welcome moves by major platforms to give users more control," end quote, over gambling advertising. And should a future government decide to enforce even just the rights of users to block advertising, then I would suggest that that's something that we don't want to see trade bills stopping happening. And so I conclude by referring to what the noble lady Baroness Kennedy of the Shores said. What we're talking about here is giving guidance, giving democratic control, giving sovereign control to our trade negotiators when they're looking at future trade deals. Thank you, my lords.